Here's the thing about the Titans that makes them so tough to bet against. It feels like whenever people count them out, that's when they do their best work. And Mike Vrabel is known across the NFL as one of the best coaches at getting the most from the least. So you look at this roster and you say, okay, there's not a whole lot to love. And I'll agree with you when it comes to the offensive line and when it comes to the secondary. But there are some good pieces to work with for the Titans. Number one, signing a true number one receiver in DeAndre Hopkins is huge for this team. For all the people out there saying, oh, well, Ryan Tannehill's his quarterback, he's not going to put up good stats. Look at A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown busted onto the scene in the NFL as a rookie, 1,000-yard season, back-to-back 1,000-yard season. And then I think he had like 1,600 yards his final year in Tennessee. So he's had some good years with Ryan Tannehill. And believe you me, as somebody who's watched all the games, when Ryan Tannehill has a number one receiver, he is getting the ball to number one receivers. So I think DeAndre Hopkins is going to have a great season for the Tennessee Titans. I think the big question mark is the offensive line. One of the offensive linemen just got suspended for gambling in a unit that truly needs all the depth that they can get. So that's not great. And any quarterback is going to not look great when your offensive line is in shambles. Last season, the Titans allowed the 6th most sacks of any team in the NFL. And that's also with Ryan Tannehill being a pretty speedy guy. Like, he's not somebody who is a statue in the pocket. He can kind of scramble away, but there's limitations to that. So the offensive line needs to get better. They did draft an offensive lineman with their first pick in the NFL draft this year. Maybe that helps. But still, this is a team that's always underrated. So maybe this Titans team is a little better than people expect this season.
Yeah, you're right. They got Peter Skoronski, drafted 11th overall out of Northwestern, signed Andre Dillard from the Eagles, a 4-year, $29 million deal. I think that's a little underwhelming, but Taylor Lewan was cut. Nate Davis signed with the Bears. So they are going to have some issues on that offensive front, which brings us to the Derrick Henry question, because he's led the league in rushing attempts 3 out of the last 4 seasons, averaging 22.7 carries per game over the last 4 years, turns 30 in January, rushed for more than 1,500 yards last year. So he's an absolute stud, a beast. We know that. But Chelsa, how long can this continue?
Set the national listening audience straight when it comes to Ryan Tannehill. As somebody who is a Titans fan and somebody who is a Ryan Tannehill stan for a long time until that playoff game against the Bengals, what's your take on Ryan Tannehill? Because how many discussions have you seen, is Will Levis going to overtake Ryan Tannehill in game 1 for the Titans? Can you set the listener straight? Or maybe I'm wrong here. What do you think this season holds for Ryan Tannehill?
How many discussions have I seen? How many discussions have I had on this subject? Listen, Ryan Tannehill is a solid, good National Football League starting quarterback. That is the best way for me to put it. And for him to have success, for him to be a championship winning quarterback, the team around him has to be really, really good. And, you look back to a few years ago, they did make it to the AFC Championship game. They ran into Kansas City, couldn't get past them. And then you mentioned you had a playoff game against Baltimore. He didn't play very well. The rest of the team didn't play well. So that, it was the result there. And then you had the Cincinnati game where the defense just smothered Joe Burrow, and yet 3 interceptions cost them the win. Everything has to go, really, really well around Ryan Tannehill for them to be successful. That's why I think fans are excited, because you've brought in a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, and Treylon Burks, the second-year receiver. He looks lean. He looks like an NFL wide receiver now. He seems to be in a much better headspace when it comes to playing in the NFL. He was on our station last week and talked about his preparation had changed, that now he understood what it took to be a pro. So if you get all those things, and not to mention the guy wearing 22 in the backfield, then things could go in a different direction for the Titans. But the offensive line is in question. So that's why there's always going to be those question marks when it comes to Ryan Tannehill of, can he win that big one? And it's just kind of a wait and see with him. But I like him. I don't see Will Levis taking the job right now. In fact, Malik Willis looks better than Will Levis at this point in training camp. So I think that it's Ryan Tannehill's job. And then beyond this year, Well, that's a wait and see.
This feels like a move that I saw coming because Jim Irsay is kind of this way when it comes to the Colts, I should say. But when you see players who are unhappy with their franchise and you see that that is a big part of said team, like wouldn't you say Jonathan Taylor is probably the best player on that team right now? Does it make you question betting on the team in general when you know that maybe the vibes are a little bad?
Yeah, I think so, sure. When you hear that your star player or arguably the best player on your team is incredibly unhappy, then yeah, I think it's a real factor, especially when you're not a great team to begin with. Do you know what I mean? It's the worst of both worlds. You don't have a great team. You're searching for answers. Oh, and also maybe your most valuable asset is extremely unhappy. So I think it bodes very, very poorly. And we're also hearing those reports that maybe this is a fracture that can't be mended. I don't know. Maybe this is something that you can make it an actual fracture when you're playing Barbie with Blake and say, oh, you know, we're going to the doctor again. This is a fracture. I don't know, Chelsa. I'm just throwing stuff at the wall here. But yes, you are correct. This is a bad omen when you're a bad football team. And already your best player, a guy who could be an integral part of what you do in the future, is already thinking about other options.
The worst of both worlds sounds like a dating show on Fox, where it's like the flip of like Joe Millionaire or whatever, or was Joe Millionaire where he acted like he was a millionaire and he actually wasn't?
He wasn't. No, he wasn't at all.
Yeah, it should be a show like that where it's the worst of both worlds, where not only is he not this millionaire, he has no job and he lives in his parents' basement, but also like he's a terrible person and he's been in prison for the last 20 years. And like the worst of both worlds airing on Fox. And you see all these girls that like wannabe influencers. They're real cute, and here they are. You won the prize of this guy, the worst of both worlds.
So, Jenks, who is your Monday MVP?
I'm going with the Rangers. I feel like it's low-hanging fruit maybe, but I think maybe it's less that they're the MVP of the weekend so much as it is the shock value for me. But when DeGrom went down, I didn't think here goes their season, but I thought, man, what a huge, huge shot to the gut because he was brought in to be their ace. And it's stuck in my head, DeGrom being so upset and being emotional, talking about how he's not going to be a part of the team this season. So I love this Rangers club. They can obviously hit the ball with anyone else, but when you have a guy like that, Nathan Eovaldi will be back. He's been very good this season. And also, don't sleep on Jordan Montgomery either. He was the Cardinals' best starter. So now you have really solidified this rotation, and you've got a guy who's been there, who's won a World Series in Scherzer. If you're talking about shrewd moves to shore up your organization, the best chance to win it, yeah, they had to give up some very good prospects, no question about that. That's the way it works. I'm going with the Rangers. I think these are shrewd, smart moves and definitely makes them even more of a favorite than they were. Texas.
Has to be the Rangers for me as well, because we'll see moves like this that predate World Series wins. Remember when the Astros made that huge flashy move to land Justin Verlander at the trade deadline? That was a huge move. And guess what? They went on to win the World Series. So you need to make these big moves, even if you're doing well in the regular season, because you're not going to beat the rest of everybody else by cruising by on what you already had. You got to get better at the trade deadline, or you're getting worse. You're first or you're last, like Ricky Bobby said. All right, so for the Rangers, this was a huge move for them because we all know that they can hit the lights out. Best offense in baseball, but you need the proven starters that aren't just good in the regular season, but also in the postseason. The lights are certainly not going to be too bright for Max Scherzer in the postseason. He's been there, done that before, a great anchor to their rotation. And also adding Jordan Montgomery, like you said, you can never have enough arms when it comes to the postseason, because also the Rangers added some depth to their bullpen as well, added some pieces there. So it's a team that's not only making moves, but it's making the correct moves, because these were the biggest holes to fill, and they filled it with the best available option. So Texas Rangers, MVP of the weekend for me as well.